Today I'm going to talk about the Flesh and Blood 2.0 announcement and why it's so important to understand it, whether you collect the game or not, or if you know about it. As well as I'm going to connect it to the concepts of finance and economics, and I'm going to teach you why it's so important to understand that it's not always about profit and how much money you can make off of it, especially when we think about collectors and investors in these collectibles markets. So my opinion about Flesh and Blood previously didn't swing one way or another. I didn't have anything negative to say. I didn't have anything positive to really say about it because I just wasn't emotionally invested in it. But the reason why this announcement from Flesh and Blood is so important is because it's the only one time I actually seen a company and their creators actually reaching out to the community and actually talking about why some things are important when it comes to considering people who invest, people who collect, and the actual importance of the community itself in these collectible card games. And before I go into the 2.0 announcement and what it exactly was, I'm first going to use an analogy to explain to you these concepts of financial markets and why sometimes when you purely focus on profits, it doesn't work and it'll damage a lot of markets long term, both the individuals as well as the market itself. So you analyze any society, any market, and you imagine it kind of like a fish tank, I guess, right? Where you have a lot of small fishes, which is everyone, and then you have some people that are profiting off of everyone on top of the ladder, which will be the sharks in this case, and in this case, it'll be the investors in these collectible card games. Or in the case that if you really want to open your mind to these ideas, you could think of it as like the 1% or the people that are really, really rich in our society who owns businesses and whatnot. And it's so obvious when you think about it like this, right? Where this ecosystem only thrives and will only survive if the shark, which is on top of the food chain, doesn't overeat, doesn't get greedy. Because what happens if it gets greedy, right? It's going to starve to death and the ecosystem is going to die because it's going to overeat and the fish are not going to be able to reproduce fast enough. And so what happens eventually? All the food is gone and everyone loses. And this is such a delicate balance, right? And then let's replace these concepts of fish and sharks, and we're going to think about it as the sharks as investors, and pretty much these are investors in the markets of games like Pokemon, Weiss Schwarz, MetaZoo, right? And then the people that are buying off of them are the people that they're flipping it and they're raising all these stonks prices and roping these people in and kind of ripping them off, right? So what happens when you drive out all the actual collectors and the people who want to play these games out of the market? Eventually, since you're jacking up all these prices, what's only going to be left at some point will only be the sharks that are swimming around. Because if the prices stay consistently at these times 20, times 50, and everyone's just trying to flip for a profit, the fish will not want to be hanging around this ecosystem because you know what? It's like, we're going to lose anyways, and these guys are just trying to prey on us, and it's just so obvious, right? So why am I going to stick around? Which is why this is such a key concept to understand, where it's not so much like, oh, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. You have to understand, even in the economy, right, outside of collectible card games, where if you're only taking advantage of people that are less fortunate than you, then eventually you'll have no one to take advantage of because everyone is losing. And when you have to realize that just because you're winning right now, if you continue to win and everyone else loses, in the end, everyone loses. Which will bring back to the main topic, which was the Flesh and Blood 2.0 announcement, and why I found this so interesting and it's such like a breath of fresh air into the collecting community, and how I think even outside the collecting community, how businesses should be handled and being more transparent and actually considering their customer base and considering the actual people behind these labels like collectors, investors, players, and whatnot, and actually doing things that are of a benefit to the community. So what's the big announcement, right? The big announcement is that they are removing the fact that there is going to be unlimited and first edition booster box products. And why is this important, right? So their primary mission, like they say, is that they're trying to bring people together in the product to just by using the common language of playing great games. So focusing on the actual community itself, right? And automatically you have people in the uproar like, oh my God, this is going to be the end of it. Everyone, they don't care about the investors. People are going to leave the game. It's going to be, the end. It's like the apocalypse. And you draw the same parallels between like Pokemon and Weiss Schwarz, for example. You see in the community all the time where, oh my god, they're reprinting a set, it's over. They don't care about investors and everything, right? But that's a very, very biased opinion, and just I bring it up all the time. You have to focus on the reason why people are angry, right? The people are angry and very, very loud and very, very vocal because you have to focus on this because they're the ones that are heavily investing in these products, and they're the ones that are trying to jack up these prices and just looking to flip these for a quick profit and trying to sell it to other people at times 20 times 50 the price, where they're hogging all the product, and then there's all sorts of shady things going on, right? And I also want you to remember that Flesh and Blood kind of grew during these past 2 years because everyone was investing in it. So when they made a point in this statement where they're talking about how the game started off very, very slow, and the concept of first edition unlimited that brought this collectible market and these collectors and investors in is because the market was very, very small at the time, so it worked. And then as the game grew, where there was more and more and more people coming into it, it became very, very apparent that the fact that there was a differentiation between first edition and exclusivity, and then there was the unlimited edition, made a very, very big problem where it became a point where only the most expensive versions of the cards and the products like booster boxes had the most, biggest chase cards and most valuable cards, and it was the version to get. And if you weren't able to get this first edition box, then you were kind of out of luck. Which again, I want you to draw your attention where I keep drawing the parallels and comparing Weiss Schwarz with every other card game, right? Where I saw this same problem in Weiss Schwarz where everyone's hogging all these first edition cards and everyone's going game stonks to the moon and everyone's trying to flip these for like a bajillion bingo bucks to people, all these graded cards and whatever it is, right? And then, it pretty much is entering a market where everyone's just trying to flip cards. It's all not for sale, not for trade, all selling things at times 20 the price, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. And it's not good for the community if you think about it. Yeah, you're making money short term, but I would assume if you're someone that's a new collector or you're a new player and you're coming into this where everything is like so expensive if you want to play something that you want to play, and then we have these cases where there's reprints, which is great, right? But then you have these people flipping out like, I'm not going to support the company anymore because they're doing the reprints. They don't care about us. But is it that you don't think that they care about us, or is it because you think that you can't flip these things anymore and you can't rip people off and charge times 20 the price? And the creators made a point to point out that make this announcement, write all this stuff out, because they want to point out that it's very, very important that players are able to get their hands on these products. And there's a lot of shenanigans going on where, a lot of these first edition products are being hogged up and they're being held where normal people are not able to get a hold of it unless they had the means to do so. So you're pretty much gatekeeping people from having fun and collecting, which is the most important part about these games, right? But you're gatekeeping people because they don't have money. Where the whole market is all just about, who can hold as many of these first edition boxes as possible, who can hold as many of these exclusive products as possible, right? And then you look at like Weiss Schwarz, for example, you look at, any of these first edition boxes, you look at MetaZoo, it's all about everyone's speculating who can get rich, who can, just hoard all these products and hoard all these sealed cases. If you didn't pre-order it, good luck. It's going to be times 3, times 4 the price now. So by eliminating the fact that there's going to be first edition and unlimited, what they're going to do is they're pretty much just going to have one version of it, but they're still going to have rarities to the cards and rare versions and foil versions of the card. It'll just be more rare, but as for actual playing of the game and actual versions of the cards, people aren't gatekept. There's no differentiation between first edition and unlimited, so there's not going to be people hoarding all these boxes. There's just going to be boxes alone, which is exactly what I think is happened in Pokemon pretty much, where they got rid of first edition, where if every set had a first edition unlimited, it'll probably hurt the game long term, where everyone's just pretty much saying, oh, well, unlimited is garbage, so everyone's just going to invest in first edition. And then you're going to keep people that want to just have fun and be able to get their hands on these cards just because, they can't afford it. Well, too bad for them. So pretty much if you check out the announcement yourself, they're talking about how they want players to be able to enjoy, players of all kinds. It doesn't mean you have to be rich to buy sealed cases of everything. You know, they want all players to be able to enjoy these things and not worry about some dickhead hoarding all these first edition boxes and selling it at a premium because, oh, okay, he had the money to do so. Whereas if you didn't have the money to pre-order these things, then you would have been boned, right? So they're taking care of their community. And I think this is something that's really, really, really important because there's a huge problem in the communities like Weiss Schwarz where I think they're starting to tackle it where there's all these people that are just hoarding up all these products because it stonks. And most of these people probably don't even care about whether they play or not, don't even care about, okay, other people in the community where they're just saying, well, you either buy it from me or since I bought out everything, you have no other choice. And I like the transparency in this because they're actually talking about it and addressing these things in the community directly. Whereas something like Bushi Road, where I feel like they're tackling this issue with Weiss Schwarz, where they're doing reprints like, you know, slowly and silently without actually saying these ahead of times, but they're not actually outright saying, hey, you know what, there's a problem with, you know, everyone just investing in these games and it's pretty much unaffordable for some people to be able to buy into these like sets that they want to play. Where I think they're kind of listening by reprinting these things, but I feel like what a lot of card games could do better is just addressing the fact that, hey, if there's a problem in the community, it's something we need to fix so that we could benefit everyone. Because at the end of the day, people are in these games because they want to have fun, because it's their way of, you know, de-stressing or, you know, just taking their mind off of like, you know, the complicated things in life. And I think this is really cool. And they also brought up a point where they talked about how pretty much they could have went down the route of making premium collector products and, you know, having super, super expensive versions of it. But it's kind of like how where you're gate kept in Magic the Gathering, where some things are only in collector's boosters. And if you can't afford a $200 booster box, then, you know, screw you, right? Or Weiss Schwarz, for example, where, well, we printed it once and these cases were $1,000. Well, if you couldn't afford a sealed case, then you're just going to have to deal with these people mapping out these things and charging $800, $900, $1,200, $2,000 for some of these cards that, you know, some people might want to have as well, too. And they're addressing this where they realize that, hey, you know what? At some point in anyone's lives where when you collect these things, you think about how exciting it is, where if you open a pack, you're able to get some of these rare chase cards, and they want everyone to have this feeling, not only for the people that can afford it. And I'm not going to go too deep into like their whole announcement because they're also doing things like adding PvE to the game as well too, where you're going to have multiplayer where people could cooperatively tackle things. And I think that's really, really cool in the way they tackle reprints, because it's also a problem if you actually look at games like Yu-gi-Oh, for example, right? Where in Yu-gi-Oh, you could have certain staples like, let's see, they're reprinting it now, but you could have staples like Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, where previously, you know what, if you weren't able to afford a Starlight Rare version, which was $600, you're out of luck. And the only other way you could play this card is if you pay $100 for this version. And this is not even an isolated issue with Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, where you have other staples like the Dark Magicians, right? Well, if you couldn't afford the Starlight Rare version of the Dark Magicians, guess what? The only other option you had is another $100 version of this card, which was never reprinted. And it's these small things that kind of gatekeep people from actually enjoying these games. Whereas, like, I personally had no interest in Flesh and Blood previously, but you know what? If they're adding PvE to this, they're doing all these changes, and they're doing things that are of benefit to the people that are in the community, where they realize, hey, you know what? There's people out there that are just scalping these boxes, reselling these boxes, sitting on these sealed products. You know what? We're just going to do straight up just unlimited one print run of things, like one single version print run of things. And then going forward, you don't have to worry about some dickhead just hogging all the first edition boxes, so you wouldn't be able to get these certain rarities of certain cards. And this goes back to the concept of how if these things go pretty much unintervented and there's no interference between the people that are making these games, pretty much you're just gonna let these people who are sharks run wild, where, you know what, oh, times 20, times 50, times 60, times 100 the price. Well, eventually everyone's gonna leave the market because they can't afford it, and you're just left with a bunch of investors. And, you know, where does that leave you, right? You still end up losing as someone who invested in it, because, you know, all the people that were probably willing to buy it probably got driven away. And again, going back to in my previous video where I talked about ethics and whatnot, right? You can't always just say, oh, business is gonna go how business is. It's just business, right? The market's gonna do what the market's gonna do. And then you connect that to real finance and real economics in the real world, where people are living in poverty, people who can't afford rent and things like that, people who don't have living wages that could actually give them a sustainable life where they're able to enjoy their lives and not just live to work. Can you tell these people who are living in these shabby apartments with multiple people as grown adults, and they can't afford to move out or whatever it is, and they're living with really, really poor living conditions, can you tell me honestly that you could go up to these people and say, oh, the market's gonna do what the market's gonna do, when they can't put food on their table? And this is the important part, right? Whether you're someone that's working or someone that plans to run a business, or you are running a business, there's a certain point where, you know what, you could make money, you can make a living, but there's certain principles you have to live by, where you're not just trying to take advantage of people for as much as you can just because you can and they have no other choice. Because at some point, especially when it comes to these small businesses that go out of business, when they get greedy, what happens? No one wants to go to them anymore, and then the business closes. So yeah, that's pretty much my main point. I just want to point out how, you know what, sometimes it is pretty cool when you have certain businesses that realize that, you know, there's these market manipulation things going on, and it's kind of screwing over everyone, where people aren't able to just have fun when it should be a hobby where you can make money and have fun at the same time. And I think this is a really, really big lesson other companies can learn, like, you know, Konami, Bushiroad, Weiss Schwarz, Pokemon, and stuff like that, right? Where I think markets like Pokemon actually do take note of this, and that's why they reprint things and they address issues where things like, you know what, people were stealing from factories, people were breaking street dates. They'll investigate that and they'll take care of it, right? Whereas somewhere in like Bushiroad and Weiss Schwarz, for example, there's a lot of crap going on with Weiss Schwarz that's just so unethical, like people breaking street dates, people pretty much like hoarding all these products and like jacking it up by times 20, times 50 the price. Potentially people, you know, with different cards that shouldn't be released. All these things going on, right? Shill bidding and all this crap that is not addressed. When the creators of these games and people who manage these games are able to actually, you know, address these problems in the market, where, you know, they know it's a problem, you know what, we'll just do a reprint just to, you know, stabilize things and give the players what they want, so that, you know, they could control these things from getting out of hand. I think this is really, really important, and it's kind of lessons you could learn, whether it's in these collectible businesses or in actual running actual businesses as well too, where there's profit and then there's taking care of your customer base, so you can have a sustainable business where your customers can be happy and you can profit as well too, and that's a win-win for everyone. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something from this video. Take care.